Love, identity, connection, these are universal desires, yet the way we navigate them isn't always the same. While most mainstream narratives about dating tend to revolve around heteronormative experiences, there exists a vibrant, complex, and deeply human spectrum of love stories often left in the margins. Today, we're diving into the diverse, beautiful, and sometimes challenging world of LGBT+ relationships, a journey filled with resilience, self-discovery, community, and the quest for authenticity. Welcome to this episode of Navigating Dating, exploring the spectrum of LGBT+ relationships. Whether you're part of the community, a curious ally, or someone questioning your place in the dating world, this video is for you. Because dating, especially when you're LGBTQ+, isn't just about finding someone you click with. It's also about finding safety, being understood, and rewriting narratives in a world that still sometimes resists diversity in love. Dating while queer can be exhilarating and empowering, but it can also mean navigating unique hurdles, from coming out and dealing with family rejection, to confronting societal expectations, to finding spaces where your identity is affirmed. Trans people may face questions around bodily autonomy and intimacy that cis people rarely encounter. Asexual or aromantic folks often have to explain and defend the very validity of their feelings in a world obsessed with sex and romance. And then there's the intersectionality of race, class, religion, and culture, layers that further influence how queer people date, love, and exist. But let's not forget, this isn't just about challenges, it's also about joy. Queer dating can be revolutionary. It can teach us that love doesn't have to look one way. That relationships can be soft, fluid, chosen, intentional. That romance can be rewritten to include friendship, community care, open communication, or even the decision not to date at all. And still be whole, still be beautiful. Throughout this video, we'll look at different dating experiences within the LGBTQ+ umbrella, from lesbian and gay couples breaking stereotypes, to non-binary folks challenging gender dynamics, to queer polyamory, online dating, and the importance of safe spaces. We'll also explore real-life stories, expert insights, and hard-hitting questions. What does dating mean when you've never seen your kind of love reflected on screen? What does safety mean in a hookup culture shaped by Grindr and Tinder? And what happens when your identity is considered too much or not enough? This is a conversation about nuance. It's about validating lived experiences. It's about celebrating love in all its forms, even when that love means choosing yourself. So grab a drink, settle in, and open your heart. Because queer love is love, and it deserves to be seen, heard, and honored. 1. Queer dating isn't one size fits all. When people think of dating, they often imagine a simple, linear path. You meet, you flirt, you fall in love. But for queer people, dating is rarely that straightforward. The LGBTQ+ dating world isn't just one experience. It's a rich, complex mosaic made up of diverse identities, desires, and realities. Whether someone is gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, non-binary, asexual, or anywhere else on the spectrum, their dating journey is shaped by a unique combination of who they are and how the world sees them. For some, dating might be a liberating space to express identity for the first time. For others, it can be layered with challenges, coming out, facing rejection, dealing with internalized stigma, or navigating cultural taboos. A queer Muslim might approach relationships very differently from a white gay man in a Western city. A disabled lesbian in her 40s will have different priorities and struggles than a college-aged pansexual. These differences matter. They shape what we want from relationships, how we connect with others, and what risks we're willing, or unwilling, to take. Let's talk about dating apps. While they've created more access and visibility, they can also reflect the biases of the broader world. Racism, transphobia, fatphobia, and ableism often show up in the form of exclusionary bios or fetishizing messages. Some queer people find empowerment through swiping, others feel alienated or unseen. For non-binary people or those who are gender non-conforming, many platforms don't even offer accurate identity options, forcing users to compromise who they are just to be visible. And then there's the issue of safety. For queer folks, especially trans women and people of color, dating can carry real risks of violence, of outing, or of discrimination. A casual date might require calculating what neighborhoods feel safe, or whether it's okay to hold someone's hand in public. These aren't concerns everyone has to think about, but for many queer people, they're daily realities. But despite these struggles, queer dating isn't all hardship. It's also full of beauty, creativity, and radical authenticity. Queer love doesn't always follow traditional rules. It reimagines what intimacy can look like. For some, it means chosen families instead of nuclear ones. For others, it means long-distance polycules, or relationships rooted in shared activism, art, or healing. There's no one right way to love, and that's part of the magic. In fact, many queer folks find that their relationships are deeply reflective spaces, where gender and power are discussed openly, where roles aren't assumed, and where consent and communication take center stage. There's a freedom in building love from scratch, on your own terms. 2. Identity and visibility impact how people date. Dating is never just about two people, it's also about the worlds they move through. For LGBTQ+ individuals, especially those who are trans, non-binary, asexual, bi, or pansexual, dating is often shaped by how visible their identities are, and how those identities are received by others. Whether someone is out and proud, selectively open, or entirely private about who they are, these choices don't happen in a vacuum. They directly influence who they meet, how safe they feel, and the kinds of relationships they're able to form. For many trans and non-binary people, dating means constantly navigating others' expectations, assumptions, or even ignorance. The fear of being fetishized or rejected for simply existing is very real. Some partners might not know how to respect pronouns or may focus more on someone's gender history than their personality. This adds emotional labor to every first date, every introduction, and even to conversations that should feel casual or exciting. And yet, many trans and non-binary folks find love and community in powerful, affirming ways that challenge and reshape what society thinks relationships should look like. Asexual individuals face a different set of challenges. Often misunderstood or erased entirely, ace people are frequently told that their lack of sexual attraction is something to fix or get over. In dating, this can create tension. They may be forced to constantly explain themselves, clarify boundaries, or feel pressure to compromise. But it also leads to uniquely deep connections rooted in emotional intimacy, communication, and mutual understanding. The way asexual people build relationships asks us to reconsider what truly defines love and partnership. Then there are bi and pansexual people, who frequently deal with a frustrating paradox. Being too queer for straight spaces, yet often not queer enough in LGBTQ+ ones. Their identities are questioned, doubted, or labeled as phases. This can lead to feelings of invisibility, even among communities that should feel like home. Dating while bi or pan means constantly battling the assumption that your orientation is based on your current partner's gender. Visibility matters here because validation matters. When bi and pan folks are affirmed in their identities, they can date without constantly defending or explaining who they are. Visibility isn't always a choice, either. In some cultures, countries, or even families, being out can come with very real risks, loss of safety, jobs, housing, or support. So privacy becomes a survival tactic. But privacy doesn't mean shame, and invisibility doesn't mean a lack of identity. People find quiet, beautiful ways to date, love, and connect, even when they can't shout it from the rooftops. In fact, these quieter relationships often carry an intensity and courage that goes unnoticed. 3. Safety, acceptance, and space matter. Dating is never just about finding someone, it's about finding safety. For queer individuals, this truth carries a deeper weight. While many might see dating as a personal or emotional journey, for those in the LGBTQ+ community, it's also about survival. Every message sent, every meetup planned, and every first date carries questions not just about compatibility, but about acceptance, identity, and safety. The fear isn't just about rejection. It's about being misgendered, being fetishized, or worse, being physically harmed for simply existing authentically. Let's talk about emotional safety. Queer people often grow up in environments where they're taught, explicitly or silently, that who they are is something to hide. So stepping into the dating world is already an act of bravery. For many, dating means confronting years of internalized shame or trauma. It means learning how to love oneself while navigating a society that sometimes makes self-love seem radical. And so, emotional safety becomes a baseline requirement. Will this person respect my pronouns? Will they understand my sexuality without questioning it? Can I share my past without fear of judgment? Social safety is another layer. Imagine going on a date and scanning the room not just for vibes, but for exits. Queer individuals, especially those visibly expressing their identities, often worry about public displays of affection, or even holding hands, in spaces that aren't explicitly queer-friendly. This makes the physical environment just as important as the emotional connection. That's why the presence of queer-affirming spaces, like LGBTQ+ cafes, bookstores, or bars, matters so much. They offer more than drinks or ambience. They offer safety. They offer visibility. They offer room to be. And then there's the digital space. Dating apps have become vital tools, especially for those living in conservative or unsafe regions. For many, apps are not just about convenience, they're about access. They allow queer folks to connect with people who understand them, without fear of immediate judgment. But even here, challenges exist. Profiles that say, "No trans people," or people pretending to be allies for curiosity or clout, can make the digital dating world just as harsh. That's why many queer individuals prefer platforms or filters specifically designed with inclusion and safety in mind. Community events also play a huge role. From pride parades to queer movie nights, these spaces allow people to meet organically, surrounded by affirmation. These aren't just social events, they're lifelines. They create opportunities to connect without having to explain your identity at every turn. They let people relax their guard for a moment, and maybe even fall in love. 4. Redefining norms and relationship structures. When we talk about love, most of us are raised on a singular narrative: one partner, one path, one kind of intimacy. But for many in the LGBT+ community, love doesn't always fit inside that neat little box. In fact, queer relationships have long been at the forefront of redefining what connection, commitment, and intimacy can look like. They stretch the limits of what we've been taught a relationship should be, not out of rebellion, but out of necessity, creativity, and authenticity. Let's start with polyamory. In contrast to monogamy, Polyamorous relationships openly embrace the idea that a person can love and be committed to more than one partner at a time, with full honesty and consent from everyone involved. While some still view polyamory as taboo or impractical, it's increasingly gaining visibility within queer communities. Why? Because when your identity already challenges societal expectations, you begin to question other norms too, including who, how, and how many people you love. Then there's relationship anarchy, a term that might sound extreme but is actually rooted in the belief that no one type of relationship should be prioritized over another. For relationship anarchists, the lines between friendship, romance, and chosen family often blur. Instead of following a relationship script, they co-create dynamics based on mutual trust, respect, and what actually works for them, not what society dictates. It's fluid, it's intentional, and it resists hierarchy. Queer platonic relationships are another beautiful example. These bonds go far beyond friendship. They can involve cohabitation, lifelong partnership, or deep emotional intimacy, but aren't defined by sexual or romantic attraction. For many asexual, aromantic, or neurodivergent individuals, queer platonic relationships offer a space where deep connection isn't diminished just because it doesn't fit into a conventional romantic frame. Even within more familiar relationship structures, LGBT+ individuals often defy rigid roles. For example, traditional gender expectations, who earns, who nurtures, who proposes, often get tossed aside. Same-gender and non-binary partnerships frequently require open conversations about power dynamics, emotional labor, and communication. The result? More flexibility, more honesty, and more room for each partner to express themselves authentically, rather than conform to outdated roles. These alternative relationship structures aren't just trendy or rebellious. They reflect real, lived experiences that challenge the idea that there's only one valid way to love. And while queer folks may not have invented every one of these concepts, they've been vital in giving them voice, visibility, and legitimacy. In a world where heteronormative standards have dominated for centuries, the LGBT+ community isn't just existing within the system, it's reshaping it. 5. Joy, connection, and chosen love. When we talk about queer love, it's easy to focus only on the hardships, the rejection, the fear, the coming out stories full of pain. But that's not the whole story. Queer love isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving, too. It's about joy. Real, deep, unapologetic joy that comes from finally being seen, from loving freely, and from rewriting what love can even look like. For many people within the LGBTQ+ spectrum, love isn't just romantic, it's revolutionary. It's about finding connection in a world that tried to isolate you. Queer relationships often operate outside the boundaries of what society expects, and that's where their beauty lies. Whether it's a couple, a polycule, a queer platonic partnership, or simply a chosen family that feels more like home than any blood relation ever did, these connections are built intentionally. They're not just default settings. They're stories written with care. There's a creative force in queer love, a freedom to define intimacy and commitment on one's own terms. Without the rigid roles of tradition, people in queer relationships often talk more, listen more, and explore emotional depths many others don't even realize exist. You're not just dating someone, you're co-authoring a new kind of story together. And that requires honesty, vulnerability, and trust, the kind of trust that can only bloom in a space where you're not pretending to be someone you're not. Chosen love is radical. Chosen family is sacred. For those who've been cut off by their biological families, these bonds offer healing. They're lifelines, forged not out of obligation, but out of real love, loyalty, and care. Dinners, birthdays, holidays, they're no longer about surviving tension at the table. They become moments of laughter, of belonging, of knowing you are exactly where you're meant to be. Yes, there are struggles. Homophobia, erasure, legal battles, and internalized shame. But queer joy isn't the absence of struggle, it's joy in spite of it. It's holding hands in public after years of hiding. It's decorating a home together when you never thought you'd have one. It's dancing freely at Pride, knowing you're part of something so much bigger than yourself. It's being loved for your full self, not just tolerated, but celebrated. In queer love, there's a sense of possibility. It's not about fitting into someone else's mold, it's about building something of your own. That's why queer love is often so tender, so intentional, so powerful. It dares to ask, what if love could look like this? And then answers with a resounding, why not? The truth is, queer people are not just surviving. They're creating art, making families, writing poetry in the form of relationships. So, what did we learn? Navigating dating within the LGBTQ+ spectrum is not a one-size-fits-all journey. It's layered. It's messy. It's brave. From discovering your identity, to seeking connection in spaces that may or may not feel safe, to defining what love, partnership, or even solitude means for you, it's all valid. Each person's experience contributes to the rich, diverse patchwork of queer relationships that continue to challenge norms and expand what we think is possible. In this video, we touched on some key insights: the way lesbian relationships often challenge emotional intimacy norms, how trans and non-binary daters often redefine attraction and visibility, how bisexuals can be misunderstood or fetishized, even within queer spaces, how queer people of color navigate added layers of cultural resistance, and how asexuality, polyamory, and relationship anarchy all ask us to rethink the rules of engagement. But ultimately, the message is this: there is no wrong way to love. As long as it's rooted in consent, respect, and truth. There's no timeline for when you're supposed to date, or come out, or define yourself. There's no pressure to follow anyone's script but your own. And if you're still figuring it out, that's okay too. Sometimes the most radical love stories start with learning how to love yourself. If today's conversation helped you feel seen, or made you think about dating in a new way, we'd love to hear from you. Drop your thoughts, stories, or even your dating questions in the comments below. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. This channel is a space where we hold space for complexity, for joy, for honesty. And hey, if you're someone who's been unsure how to support a queer loved one, or you're an ally looking to understand more deeply, thank you for showing up. Learning to listen and hold space for others' truths is a powerful act of love in itself. Before we wrap up, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you found this episode valuable. We have more coming soon, more stories, more voices, more explorations of queer culture, identity, and connection. Because representation isn't a trend, it's a necessity. And the more we talk openly about what it means to date, to love, to simply exist as LGBTQ+ people, the more we help build a world that's safe, inclusive, and full of possibility. So, wherever you are in your journey, newly out, decades in, questioning, healing, thriving, or just curious, we see you. You belong here. Thanks for watching Navigating Dating, exploring the spectrum of LGBT+ relationships. Stay kind, stay curious, and as always, stay unapologetically you.